police officers fatally shoot more than 1,000 people every year. These incidents are not isolated. They are woven into the fabric of American life, making headlines and sparking outrage across the nation. Each shooting leaves behind grieving families, traumatized communities, and a society grappling with the consequences. For every headline and every protest, a fundamental question lingers: who polices the police? As communities demand answers, the call for accountability grows louder, echoing through city streets and state capitals alike. We grant law enforcement immense power, expecting it to be used to protect and serve. Officers are entrusted with the authority to make life and death decisions, and with that trust comes a profound responsibility to uphold justice and fairness for all. But when that power is abused, the system often fails to hold its own accountable. Internal investigations can be opaque and disciplinary actions are rare. Too often, the mechanisms meant to ensure justice fall short. Of the thousands of fatal police shootings in the last 2 decades, fewer than 1% have resulted in criminal charges. Even fewer have led to convictions, leaving many to wonder if justice is truly possible. This is not about a few bad apples. It's a systemic pattern. The problem is deeply rooted, affecting departments large and small, urban and rural, across the country. The narrative often shifts to justify the use of force, while victims' lives are reduced to their past mistakes. Media coverage can be biased, and official statements frequently focus on the perceived threat rather than the loss of life. Communities are left unheard, justice out of reach. The pain and frustration simmer, fueling distrust and division between police and the people they serve. This essay explores the landscape of police misconduct today, scarred by recent tragedies and systemic rot. The scars are visible in memorials, in protests, and in the stories of those who have lost loved ones. We'll look at fatal shootings in Erie and Baltimore, and departments so corrupt they were labeled criminal enterprises. These are not just stories of individual officers, but of entire systems that have failed to perform. The erosion of public trust is a direct consequence of these failures. When accountability is absent, faith in the system collapses, and the gap between police and community widens. The core issue isn't being anti-police, it's about demanding accountability. True reform means ensuring that those in power are answerable to the people they serve. The question of who polices the police cannot remain unanswered. It is a question that demands our attention, our action, and our resolve to seek justice for all. The summer of 2025 has already seen tragedy. Across the country, communities brace themselves for news that feels all too familiar as the cycle of violence and heartbreak continues to unfold. On July 2nd, Erie, Pennsylvania became the latest cycle of fatal police encounter. 6 interactions can turn fatal, and justice remains elusive. The fear that any encounter could end in tragedy is never present. For many, the promise of reform feels hollow. As communities gather to mourn the question remains: how many more lives will be lost before the cycle is finally broken? Sometimes police misconduct is not a single officer's mistake. It's an organized campaign of terror. In Rankin County, Mississippi, the goon squad of Federal oversight once served as a critical backstop for police misconduct. The Department of Justice could investigate departments and mandate reforms through consent decrees. But recent years have seen a retreat from this role, with the Trump administration ending sweeping investigations. The National Police Misconduct Database, designed to track problem officers, was taken offline in early 2025. Police departments nationwide face a severe recruitment crisis. Applications have plummeted, forcing agencies to lower standards to fill ranks. The NYPD, for example, reduced its college credit requirement for new recruits. Lower standards may help fill vacancies, but risk a less qualified, less prepared police force. Public scrutiny and better job options have made policing less attractive. Departments must choose between operating understaffed or hiring less suitable candidates. Desperation can lead to overlooking red flags, setting the stage for future problems. The challenge is not just numbers, but finding the right people for the job. Police academy training is intense but often flawed. The paramilitary approach emphasizes force over communication. 29 recruits have died during training in the past decade, often from preventable causes. Black trainees have been unfortunately effective, yet protocols remain outdated. Academies should protect their own. How can they instill a culture of care and honor? Formal training prioritizing de-escalation, warrior mindset. Better training leads to better officers and safer communities. Stories from Erie, Baltimore, Rankin County, and Hansville reveal a systemic crisis in American policing. These are not isolated incidents, but symptoms of a deeper nationwide problem that has been allowed to fester for decades. Each case exposes urgent need for reform and the devastating consequences when accountability is absent. Police crimes are more than conflict. They erode the foundation of public trust. Every abuse of power sends shockwaves through the entire society, making it a weapon of very cooperation breaks down, crimes go unsolved, and fear grows. People become reluctant to report crimes or serve as witnesses, and the cycle of violence persists. Minority communities, long marginalized generations have grown up wary of law enforcement, carrying the weight of injustice. When departments are exposed as criminal enterprises, it validates the the headlines confirm that the system is rigged against them. Requires more than policy. It demands a cultural shift in transparency and accountability. Leaders must listen to the voices of those most affected and act with courage. Independent oversight bodies must have real power to structures that enable abuse. Justice begins with truth and meaningful change. It requires all of us, citizens, leaders, and officers alike, to stand together